Well, hello and welcome to another hardcore Nuzlocke. Today I want to attempt a run of Pokemon Platinum using only water types. Water types are pretty good, both physically and defensively. They hit pretty hard, they have good defense, and Generation 4 is where we see the physical special split, so Pokemon like Gyarados can finally make use of that high attack with some good water moves like Aqua Tail or Waterfall. We're going to be able to play around with this. We're going to be able to use some old favorites and some new Pokemon. I am excited to get this run started. Before we do that, I do want to apologize for the lack of content. Last week, my schedule was extremely messed up, and then I had a trove of technical issues during this week, making it very hard for me to get this video done. It is Sunday at 7 a.m. and I am hoping to have this video up today, but I've got a lot of voiceover to do. To break it down for you real quick, 2 weeks ago, Monday, we had an overnight shift from 4 p.m. to 5 a.m. The Saturday and Sunday before that, I stayed up real late and then went to bed to try to change my schedule over. Monday night, we worked. I do all of my recordings in the mornings, so Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Tuesday morning, Monday morning. I skipped one there. We didn't do any recording. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we could do some recording, but I had some technical issues on my computer, and I had to get all of that fixed, of course. Saturday and Sunday, I worked 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., so that put a damper in the recordings. The following week, I was able to do some recordings, but again, I was still having some of those technical issues Monday and Tuesday. I was finally able to do some recording Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday I had issues with my cell phone. New security update on the phone, it wouldn't let me in with a PIN number, and I had to force my phone to restart. I don't even know how I got it fixed, but I did. We were able to do a bunch of recording yesterday, Saturday, and hopefully we can get this voiceover done today. Again, I just wanted to apologize for the lack of content in the previous week. Real life sometimes is a pain. Once again, we named our rival Algorithm because that is what we are trying to beat both in-game and in real life. If you guys want to help me beat the Algorithm in real life, you can do so by commenting on the video, liking the video, subscribing to the channel. Once again, a bunch of you are coming back every week and watching these videos, but a fair few of you are not subscribed to the channel. So if you think you're subscribed, just give her a check. Hit that button. It does help out a lot and doesn't cost you guys anything. This dude's monologue is so weird. Cyrus, you are one weird dude. As a matter of fact, Algo calls him a weirdo. It's so funny. Weird guy. So moving right along, our first encounter is Piplup. We got him from the Professor on Route 201. We named him Strife, and it has a naive plus speed nature. Can you guess the name theme of this run? After all the tutorial stuff, we finally get our hands on Pokeballs, and we catch a Bidoof named Gainsborough with a timid plus speed nature on Route 202. Once we make it to Jubilife, we can head to the West Guard Shack and get the Good Rod. I then headed back to Twin Leaf Town and caught this impish Magikarp named Wallace. That is a plus defense minus special attack and nature. This thing will be a beast on the team, but for now it's not a viable member because it'll die. The same is true for Gainsborough. It is just a normal type, not a water type, but when it evolves into Bibarel, it will be on the team. Leaving Jubilife out of the east side, we do have a Pokemon battle with our rival, Algo. At this point, Algorithm is not very strong. As a matter of fact, his Starly just gets off a bunch of growls while we take it down, eventually with Bubble. After that, his Turtwig comes out, and I decide to swap into Wallace to shake the attack drops from Growl. Turtwig just sets up withdrawals, and we swap back. Pound and Bubble are going to do about the same damage to this Pokemon, so we just have to whittle this thing down as it keeps using withdraws. It's weird that it's only doing that. Once it sets up +6, it finally does start attacking us with Tackle, and we actually lose quite a bit of health, down to 11 HP by the time we take it out. That was kind of scary. In the Orberg Gate, we get ourselves a Psyduck named Fair. It has a modest plus special attack nature. That's awesome. Heading into the first gym, we have to take on leader Rourke. Now that name sounds like Byron was in the middle of throwing up trying to name his son Rock. Alright, we're gonna name him Rourke! And his mom's just like, yeah. Look, Rourke wears a helmet, Byron looks homeless, I don't want to judge him too much, but somebody needs to come look at these people. Fair has the move Water Gun, which is stronger than the move Bubble that Strife has. Fair also has that plus special attack nature. Geodude and Onyx are quad weak to water, so Geodude falls to a single Water Gun, Onyx falls to a single Water Gun, and out comes Cranidos. Cranidos is pretty speedy, and it can hit very hard. Luckily for us, on turn 1, it just goes for Leer, and we go for Water Gun, and we cleanly one-shot this. Easy first gym. Roar! Outside the Valley Windworks, we get Kisaragi, the Naughty Shellos. That is a plus attack nature. Commander Mars is notorious for ending Nuzlocks because if you're not prepared for the Perugly in the back, you're going to lose. Perugly is strong, it's fast, it's ugly. Triple threat. Now we have evolved Wallace into a Gyarados, so we have a plan. But leading off the battle here is Strife, who is evolved into Primplup against the Zubat. I go for the newly learned Metal Claw move. We actually get a critical hit, and we get the attack boost. That is awesome. We get hit with a fairly weak bite in retaliation. Next turn, we actually miss Metal Claw, so we get hit with another weak bite, and a final Metal Claw takes out the Zubat. Out next is Perugly, so I swap into Wallace. The plan here is to get that Intimidate drop so that Perugly doesn't do as much damage, and we get hit with a Fake Out on the switch. Next turn, Perugly hits us with a fairly weak Scratch. Fake Out did more damage, and Bite looks to be doing a little over a third. I don't have any other options. Perugly hits us with another Scratch for 6 HP of damage, and Bite takes it down to red health. The Oran Berry takes it out of healing range, which is nice. We get hit with another Feint Attack, and we take it out with a final Bite. On Route 205, we encounter a Weasel named Highwind. It has an Adamant plus attack minus special attack nature. Next up is going to be Gardenia, and so in Floaroma Town, in the house north of the Pokemon Center, you can talk to the little girl with the Clefairy, and she will give you the TM for Pluck. We're going to teach Gainsborough the TM for Pluck because it has a higher attack than Strife, and that is our strategy. We're going in with a normal water type in Gainsborough, and we have Wallace that is also neutral to grass types. Wish me luck. So against Gardenia, her lead Turtwig typically likes to set up the sun and then go for Reflect. I'm hoping we can take it out with a couple of Plucks with Gainsborough. Turn 1, we go for Pluck, and it takes Turtwig down to yellow health, which is awesome, but Turtwig opts to go for Razor Leaf, putting a very big wrench in my otherwise perfect plan. Right? Perfect. Oranberry takes us back up to 23 HP, and I can take the Turtwig out with a follow-up Pluck, but because we got attacked, I can't stay in against the Cherim. I decide to swap into Strife. I don't know why I did this. We get hit with a Magical Leaf. This was a terrible play. Down to 22 HP, and I very easily could have been crit and lost my starter. I do decide to get Wallace out there because that is the only play I have. Wallace takes neutral damage from grass types. The Intimidate isn't going to do anything, and Magical Leaf surprisingly doesn't do much. I did teach Wallace Return, so we go for Return against Cherim, and we don't one-shot it. And Cherim gets off a Leech Seed, which is annoying. The follow-up Return takes out Cherim, and out comes Gardenia's pretty beastly Roserade, especially for this early in the game. Roserade is faster than us and gets off a Stun Spore, and of course we stay paralyzed the next turn. We lose a little bit more health to a Leech Seed. Roserade then hits us with a Grass Knot down to 1 HP, and at this point, we're done. We're going to lose Wallace. I go for Return, and we crit the Roserade. Leech Seed would have taken us out. Oh my goodness. That was too intense for this early in the game. Commander Jupiter is another notoriously difficult battle because of the skunk tank she has in the back. Against the Zubat, however, Fair has learned Confusion, so we fire off a Confusion down to a sliver of health. Zubat hits us with a decent Giga Drain, and we take it out with a follow-up Confusion. As Skunk Tank comes out, I swap into Wallace for the Intimidate drop, but that doesn't matter because we get hit with a critical hit Night Slash down to 26 HP. I swap in Gainsborough, who I think can handle the Night Slashes a little bit better. We get hit with back Night Slashes down to 22 HP. We get off a fairly decent headbutt for about a third, and I swap in High Wind. High Wind comes in on a Night Slash. I don't know if I'll be outsped or not, but I don't think I can tank another one, so I swap again into Strife. Strife doesn't get hit that hard on Night Slash. On the second turn, we get hit with a Poison Gas. It's too bad we're not a Steel type yet. And we fire off a very strong Bubble Beam. Down to low yellow health. Skunk Tank's Citrus Berry activates. We get hit with a little bit of poison damage. Night Slash takes us down to 19 HP. But Bubble Beam is enough to take out the Skunk Tank. Thankfully. We meet Bebe, and she wants to give us an EV, but she can't do it because our party's full. But you're the one that controls the box system. You can't just throw that thing in the PC for us, huh? That makes perfect sense. Pokemon logic at its finest. We get a docile Eevee named Valentine. Once we get to the Solaceon ruins, we can get our hands on a Water Stone and have a Vaporeon. The strategy for Fantina is pretty simple. High Wind evolved into Floatzel at level 26 and learned Crunch at level 26. We've invested EVs in speed and attack. Mismagius does have Magical Leaf, but barring a critical hit, this should be a sweep. Against the Duskull, we do outspeed it, and we one-shot it with a Crunch. That's good because it has Will-O-Wisp, and that would have put a damper in our plans. Out comes Mismagius, and we hit this thing with a very strong Crunch down to red health. If we would have critted, we would have one-shot. The Citrus Berry does pull it out of healing range, and it fires off a Magical Leaf. Luckily for us, it was not a critical hit, and it takes us down to 41 HP. A follow-up Crunch takes out the Mismagius. Out comes Haunter. We do outspeed the Haunter, but it has priority Sucker Punch. I did kind of forget about that, so as we fire off a Crunch, we get hit with a Sucker Punch down to 25 HP, but because of that investment, we one-shot the Haunter, winning us the third Gym Badge. Just outside of Hearthome, we have a battle with our rival. This battle is intense because his Staravia has Intimidate, and it likes to set up Double Team. We lead with Gainsborough. We get hit with the Intimidate, and I decide to go for Rollout. Rollout is never really a good thing to lock yourself into. Staravia goes for Double Team, and luckily for us, we miss our next Rollout, pulling us out of it, and we get hit with a fairly strong Wing Attack. I then decide to go for Stab Headbutt, which is what I should have done all along, and because of that stab bonus, looks like we can two-shot this, we get a flinch, and we manage to take out the Staravia before it does too many double teams. Out next is Grottle, up to his same old tricks, so we swap into Wallace on a avoided Razor Leaf. We go for Return for just over half damage, and there is the same old Algo like we know and love with the withdrawal strats. We hit it for another Return. I should have gone for Dragon Rage because this Return takes it down to red health. We miss or avoid another Razor Leaf, and we take it out with a Return. Out comes a Weasel. We take it out with a single Return. Last is Ponyta, and we take it out with a single Return as well. Just outside that gate, there is a guy that gives us the good rod, and now we can start fishing for some more encounters. We catch Reno the Goldeen with a sassy nature on Route 209. We catch Rude the Finneon on Route 218 with a naive nature. And last for the encounters is Sith that we catch in Eternacidia with an adamant nature. We also grab a Water Stone and evolve our Eevee into a Vaporeon. Very nice. After that, on Route 215, look at that face. We catch ourselves a Meryl with a naughty nature named Genova, and it actually has the huge power ability that is, well, huge. Against Maylene, I make a terrible, terrible mistake. I lead with Gainsborough because it has the move Pluck, but I forgot that Gainsborough is water normal type. Metatite does hit us with a fake out for some chip damage. I fire off a Pluck on the next turn, and it's not quite enough to one-shot the Metatite. Metatite hits us with a Drain Punch that straight up just one-shots us. Kinda fitting considering who I named this Pokemon after. Have you guys guessed the name theme yet? Losing Bidoof is terrible. Haha. But Barrel is a good HM Pokemon. I send in Wallace. We intimidate the Metatite and just go for Return. Return is enough to knock out the Metatite. Against the Machoke, I decide to swap into Fair. Machoke goes for Focus Energy on the swap, and I decide to go for Water Pulse. Figure that would do a little bit more damage. We get hit with a critical hit, Rock Tomb, for over half health. I decide I don't want to risk another crit, so I swap into Strife. We get hit with a Karate Chop on the swap, and a Bubble Beam takes out the Machoke, leaving just Lucario. When Lucario comes out, I immediately swap into Wallace. That was the plan all along, to get that Intimidate drop. We get hit with a Force Palm, that of course, why wouldn't it paralyze? Adding insult to energy, whatever. Energy. Oh, I decide to go for Earthquake because of the paralysis. We are outsped and hit with another Force Palm, and then we stay paralyzed. We get hit with another Force Palm, that's 3 in a row, for very, very weak damage, and we finally fire off that Earthquake. Earthquake is a TM that you can find in the Wayward Cave. I'm glad I grabbed it because we one-shot the Lucario, and we avenge our fallen friend. Just outside of Pastoria on Route 212, we catch ourselves a careful Quagsire named Elena. I was going to get a Whooper in the Great Marsh, but I went out here looking for the TM for Toxic. I'll take this derpy dudette on the team any day, however. Just outside of Wake's gym, we have another run-in with Algorithm. This time, this battle is a little bit scary because Staravia does have Endeavor. We lead with Genova to suck up the Intimidate. Endeavor is a move that will bring us down to whatever HP Staravia has, and then it can take us out with a quick attack. I decide to swap in Wallace and get off an Intimidate of my own. Staravia just goes for a double team. I have learned Ice Fang, so I go for Ice Fang and miss. Staravia just goes for double team. I go for Ice Fang again and miss. Staravia sets up another double team, so that's +3. And we finally connect with an Ice Fang to one-shot the Staravia. Nice. Out comes Ponyta next, which is a weird choice. We take it out with an Aqua Tail. Next up is Grottle. We go for Ice Fang. It doesn't take it out, but it does freeze. But that doesn't matter because it defrosts immediately and hits us with a decent little Razor Leaf. A second Ice Fang takes out the Grottle. Last but not least is Weasel, and we just shake this thing until it goes away. I think that's illegal. CPS may come and take my Pokemon. I did go ahead and do some fishing in Pastoria and caught myself a naughty Remoraid named 13. If you haven't guessed the name theme by now, this is a big hint, especially considering Octillery is red. 13. Against Crash or Wake, I lead with Genova against the Gyarados to once again soak up and Intimidate. After we soak up the Intimidate, I go ahead and swap in my own Gyarados for its own Intimidate. We get hit with a Bite in this process, and then I swap in Strife. Strife can resist most everything that Crash or Wake has. We get hit with a very weak Bite on the swap in, and then go for Grass Knot. Gyarados is faster than us and hits us with a Waterfall, which of course gets the flinch. So we get hit with another Waterfall and finally get off a Grass Knot. Grass Knot does well over half of Gyarados' health. We get hit with a final Waterfall from this thing and take it out with a Grass Knot. Out comes Quagsire. Quagsire is 4 times weak to grass because it's the OG water ground type, so we one-shot it with Grass Knot. Out comes Floatzel. Floatzel is fast. Floatzel hits us with Crunch. Floatzel crits with Crunch. Down to 36 HP, we do get off a very strong Grass Knot. Not enough to take the Floatzel out, but it is enough to eat up its Citrus Berry, and the Citrus Berry pulls it out of healing range. I decide to swap into Wallace to avoid a critical hit again. We get hit with back-to-back crunches, and we take this thing out with an Earthquake. That is 4 gym badges in our pockets. I completely and utterly forgot you have to battle Cyrus in Celestic Town, so here is Highwind at half health and Genova at red health, Farron Wallace at half health, we have an HM Mon on us, and Strife is the only Pokemon that's full health. I decide to swap Strife in because it can resist everything Sneasel has, and we get hit with a Slash on the swap in. Sneasel is faster than us, so it gets off another Slash as we fire off a very strong Brine that does over half damage. We get hit with one more Slash, and Brine takes out Sneasel. Out comes Golbat. Golbat, of course, outspeeds us and goes for Supersonic, but it misses, which is awesome. We hit it with Brine. Golbat then goes for Air Cutter, which does a little bit of damage, and a follow-up Brine takes it out. Brine does more damage if the Pokemon is at half health or less. Last but not least is Murkrow. Murkrow outspeeds us and hits us with a Nightshade that does an even 36 damage, and we fire off a Brine that just cleanly one-shots the Murkrow. That's good because we couldn't have survived another Nightshade. We now have access to Surf, so I go to Route 219 and 220. On Route 220, I catch a Jolly Wingull named Biggs, and I catch a Calm Tentacool named Hojo on Route 219. In Canalave City, Algo challenges us once again on a bridge of all places, which is probably dangerous, but that's fine. We're just kids battling epic monsters. Against his Staraptor, I lead with our newly evolved Tentacruel, Hojo. The Intimidate doesn't matter, we fire off an Ice Beam that straight up one-shots the Staraptor. Nice. Out next is Rapidash, so I stay in and go for Water Pulse. Water Pulse doesn't quite take out the Rapidash, so it gets off a Leer. A follow-up Water Pulse takes out the Rapidash, and out comes Heracross. For Heracross, I go for Water Pulse, and it does about a third, and then we get hit with a very strong Night Slash, so I need to swap out. I decide to swap into Wallace to get off that Intimidate, and we get hit with a Night Slash. We fire off a very strong Return down to a sliver of health. We get hit with another Night Slash, and a follow-up Return takes out the Heracross. Out comes Torterra, and Torterra now is a ground grass type, so it's quad weak to ice, so an Ice Fang cleanly one-shots the Torterra, leaving just Algo's Floatzel. For Floatzel, we get outsped and hit with Swift, down to 49 HP, and Return, unfortunately, isn't enough to one-shot the Floatzel. So that I don't get taken out with a crit, I decide to swap into Strife, who can tank the Swift on the swap, and then the follow-up Swift because we get outsped, and can easily take out the Floatzel with a Grass Knot. Against Rourke's homeless father, I have a plan. Look at this guy, he looks homeless, he's carrying a shovel. You know what that's for? That's for a toilet. Against his lead Magneton, I lead with Elena. Magneton outspeeds us and hits us with a Metal Sound, which lowers our special defense. We fire back with a quad super effective Stab Earthquake that takes out the Magneton in one single hit. Out comes Steelix, and my plan is simple. Steelix sets up a Sandstorm, and I go for Yawn. Next turn, Steelix outspeeds us and hits us with a fairly decent Earthquake for just under half health, and I set up the Rain. Steelix then falls asleep, and the Rain has been set up. I swap into Strife. Steelix does stay asleep, and I fire back with a Rain-boosted, quad super effective Stab Surf, one-shotting the Steelix. Bastiodon is out last, and it too gets hit with a Rain-boosted Stab, quad super effective Surf, one-shotting it, and easily winning us the 6th gym badge. I didn't show the galactic stuff at the lakes because it's pretty easy to beat both Saturn and Mars. We then made our way to Snowpoint City and decided to take on Candace. I have a plan with 13 here against her Sneasel. Sneasel does outspeed us and hit us with a decent feint attack for 44 HP of damage, but we cleanly one-shot it with a flamethrower in retaliation. Out comes Abomasnow, who sets up the hail with snow warning. We outspeed it and take it out with a quad super effective flamethrower. Frostlass is up next, and the hail is going to make it +1 evasion. Frostlass then sets up a double team, but we break through that to hit it with a very strong flamethrower down deep into the red health. The citrus berry luckily pulls it out of healing range. We get hit with a shadow ball on the next turn. I knew we could survive it, but it drops us deep into the red and flamethrower misses. Hail then chips us down to 6 HP. I swap into Strife. Strife can actually wall Frostlass pretty well. We get hit with a blizzard on the swap in, which again we resist. On the next turn we get hit with a shadow ball, which we resist. And we fire off a brine that actually connects and takes out the Frostlass, putting us in perfect position for the Pillowswine. Pillowswine comes out, and we hit it with a Surf to cleanly one-shot it, winning us the 7th gym badge. We went to the last lake, we went to the galactic headquarters, we did all of that stuff, got the HM for rock climb. There was a bunch of stuff that we skipped, and we've made our way to the top of Mount Coronet, where we are forced to have a rematch with Mars and Jupiter in a double battle style with our rival. Our rival is a terrible teammate, so I lead with Strife, who has a strong move in Surf. We go for Surf first turn, and it does well over half damage to both of the Bronzors, and it does a decent amount of damage to the Munchlax. Bronzor then sets up Reflect, and the other one sets up a Light Screen. Munchlax just goes for Screech. The next Surf doesn't quite take out the Bronzors because of the Light Screen. Munchlax gets hit with an extra sensory, getting taken out, and we get hit with Confuse Ray. I do manage to break through confusion on the next turn as our rival sends out Rapidash and hit a Surf, taking out the Rapidash and both Bronzors. I'm going to beat Mars, Jupiter, and my rival. That's the goal here. Purugly comes out for Mars, Floatzel comes out for the rival, and Skuntank comes out for Jupiter. Purugly misses its Hypnosis. Floatzel goes for Brick Break against the Purugly, which is awesome, getting rid of the Light Screen and Reflect. We then hit both of them through confusion with Surf to take out the Purugly and do over half damage to the Skuntank. We do a decent amount of damage to the Floatzel as well. Citrus Berry heals Skuntank back up into high green health, and we get hit with a decent flamethrower. Out next is Golbat for Mars. Floatzel goes for Iron Tail against the Skuntank, taking it back down to half health, and Golbat goes for a weak Air Cutter. I miss or hurt myself in confusion. Skuntank goes for Poison Jab against the Floatzel, taking it out, and out comes Staraptor, getting off Intimidate to both Pokemon, which is super nice. Golbat misses its attack. Staraptor gets a critical hit takedown on the Skuntank to take it out, and get hit with a Confuse Ray on the Staraptor. We finally snap out of confusion and hit the Golbat with a fairly strong Surf down to yellow health, and out comes Jupiter's Golbat. Staraptor hurts itself in confusion and takes itself out, which is perfectly fine. We get hit with a weak Bite and fire off a fairly decent Surf that takes out the one Golbat and takes the other one to half health. Out comes Heracross for our rival. I forgot he had one more Pokemon. That's terrible. Heracross goes for Night Slash against the Golbat and knocks it out. I didn't quite beat the rival, but we did beat Mars and Jupiter. Cyrus then messes around with the red chain, starts summoning Pokemon like Dialga and Palkia. The Lake Trio decide they want to try to step in to maintain the balance between the two worlds, and out comes Giratina to show that he will not be messed with as well, and opens up a portal to the distortion world that, of course, a child like myself is gotta fix. After making our way through the distortion world, we now have a battle with Cyrus. I lead with a Lena against his Houndoom, and we're a bit underleveled for this portion in the game. We do get outsped and hit for over half of our health with a Dark Pulse, but a stab super effective Earthquake is enough to take out the Houndoom. Out next is Gyarados for Cyrus, who gets off an Intimidate, so I swap into Strife. We get hit with a Waterfall on the swap in, which is resisted, and we hit it with a decent Grass Knot for about a third. Now, what I didn't realize is Cyrus has Earthquake on his Gyarados, and it fires off an Earthquake that drops us all the way down to 5 HP. My heart sank. Whew. At least we didn't lose Strife here. I then decide to swap in my own Gyarados and Wallace that gets off an Intimidate, and we get hit with a resisted Waterfall on the swap in. Gyarados outspeeds us and hits us with an Ice Fang, and I set up a Dragon Dance. Now we outspeed the Gyarados, so I set up a second Dragon Dance, and luckily Gyarados just misses an Ice Fang. I then fire off an Ice Fang, which doesn't quite KO the Gyarados, and we flinch it. Cyrus then uses a full Restore, and I fire off back-to-back Ice Fangs to take out the Gyarados. Next up is Honchkrow, and because we have the +2 attack and +2 speed, we can fire off an Ice Fang and taking out the Honchkrow in one shot. Next up is Weavile. Weavile is faster than us and does hit a Fake Out to flinch us and do a little bit of chip damage, but on the follow-up, we hit it with an Earthquake to take it out. Last but not least is Cyrus's Crobat, which we take out with a single Ice Fang, winning us the last of the galactic stuff that we have to do in this game. Next up is a battle with Giratina, and technically I could just throw the Master Ball at this thing and then be done with this battle, but I wanted to battle it nonetheless. I lead with Elena against a literal god. Giratina hits us with an Ancient Power, and I fire off a Yawn. Giratina hits us with another Ancient Power, and I misclicked on Strength, so it doesn't do any damage because this is a Ghost Dragon type, and Giratina falls asleep. I then swap into Hojo. Giratina stays asleep, and we start firing off Ice Beams against the Dragon Ghost, god of the distortion world. It does about a third. Giratina stays asleep. We hit it with another Ice Beam. Giratina stays asleep, and we finish it off with a third and final Ice Beam. Let's get out of the distortion world and get back to the Pokemon League Challenge. Volkner has electric types, but I have 3 ground water types, so I'm not really worried about this battle. Against his lead Jolteon, I lead with Elena. We do get outsped and hit with a fairly weak Iron Tail that does get the defense drop. I go for Earthquake and one-shot the Jolteon. Because of the defense drop as Raichu comes out, I decide to swap into Sith. We do get hit with a Focus Blast on the swap in, which doesn't do much damage. Raichu does outspeed us and go for a Focus Blast again, but it misses, and an Earthquake is enough to cleanly one-shot the Raichu. Out comes Electivire. It just goes for Quick Attack. An Earthquake is enough to one-shot the Electivire. However, we are sitting at about half health. So as the Luxray comes out, I decide to swap back into Elena. We get hit with a Crunch on the swap in, and it gets the defense drop. That's twice. I then swap into Kisaragi because I haven't used it at all. We did evolve it though into a Gastrodon. And we get hit with a Crunch, we get hit with another Crunch, and we get off a Mud Bomb that does well over half damage. As long as we hit the next one, we win. Crunch takes us down to 65 HP, and Mud Bomb takes out the Luxray, winning us the 8th and final gym. After we make our way through the Victory Road, just before we enter the chamber for the Elite Four, our rival Algorithm decides to challenge us one last time. His team is to the max, but I have some counters. Against his Staraptor, I lead with 13. We soak up the Intimidate and fire off an Ice Beam that cleanly one-shots it. Out next is Torterra, once again quad weak to Ice, so we fire off an Ice Beam, one-shotting the Torterra with a critical hit. Snorlax comes out, and I decide to swap into Wallace for the Intimidate drop. We do get hit with a Body Slam that of course paralyzes, but it was just a pivot through Wallace into Genova. Genova does get hit with a Body Slam. We fire off a Brick Break, which is enough to one-shot the Snorlax, surprising. Out next is Heracross. I decide to swap into Wallace for that Intimidate drop and soak up the incoming close combat. I decide to stay in and fire off an Earthquake, but we get outsped and hit with a Rock Slide. I forgot Heracross had that. Luckily for us, it didn't crit, and an Earthquake does well over half damage. We then swap into Strife on a Rock Slide. We take out the Heracross with a Drill Peck that we just learned. Out comes Floatzel, who hits us with a Brick Break for a decent amount of damage. I forgot I had that. But we take out the Floatzel with a Grass Knot. Out last is Rapidash. I'm not even worried about this thing. We fire off a Surf, beating the algorithm for the final time this run. So here is our team, Ragtag team. We have 13 the Octillery with a decent moveset in Flamethrower, Signal Beam, Charge Beam, and Ice Beam. We have Strife with Drill Peck, Grass Knot, Surf, and Flash Cannon. Genova with Strength, Aqua Ring, Aqua Tail, and Brick Break. Hojo with Ice Beam, Sludge Bomb, Toxic Spikes, and Surf. We have High Wind with Crunch, Ice Fang, Aqua Jet, and Substitute. And last but not least, Wallace with Earthquake, Ice Fang, Aqua Tail, and Dragon Dance. First for the Elite Four is the Bug Trainer Aaron. Leading the charge is red for us against the Yanmega. Yanmega sets up a double team. 13 isn't having any of that and cleanly one-shots it with a Flamethrower. Out next is Heracross. Heracross does get off a Mega Horn that does significant damage, taking us down to 42 HP, and we hit it with a Flamethrower. This has completely ruined my plan. Because Flamethrower is not enough to one-shot the Heracross. I then decide to pivot through into Wallace as Aaron goes for a full restore. I then go into Strife knowing that Heracross has a Stone Edge, which doesn't do a lot of damage to Strife, albeit a critical hit. I then go for Drill Peck, and that cleanly one-shots the Heracross. Out comes Vespiquen. We go for Drill Peck for over half health, and she just goes for Attack Order, which doesn't do a lot of damage. A follow-up Drill Peck takes out the Vespiquen, and out comes Scizor. Now this is where I wanted red for, because quad weak to fire. I do swap into Wallace for that Intimidate drop, getting hit with a very weak Exciser. We then swap into Genova on a Night Slash. It doesn't do a lot of damage to us. We fire off a Brick Break, which does significant damage to Scizor, and then we get hit with another Exciser, down to just over half health. A follow-up Brick Break takes it out, leaving just Drapion. Drapion hits us with a Cross Poison for a decent chunk of damage, and Brick Break, unfortunately, isn't doing as much as I thought it would. It's not going to be a two-shot, so I swap into Hojo on a Cross Poison, and then we outspeed and take it out with a Surf. The plan going into Bertha is simple. She has Ground-type Pokemon, I have Water-type. I decide to lead with Strife, because Strife has Grass Knot, and she leads with a Whiscash. Unfortunately, however, Grass Knot is not enough to knock out the Whiscash, so it sets up the Sandstorm, which doesn't really affect us, and Bertha goes for a full restore. I get back-to-back Grass Knots to take out the Whiscash, and out comes Hippowdon. Against the Hippowdon, I decide to go for Grass Knot because it does extra damage to heavy Pokemon, and it one-shots it cleanly. Out next is Gliscor. Gliscor outspeeds us and hits us with an Earthquake that does some serious damage to Strife and would have knocked us out had it been a crit. We go unpunished and fire off a Surf that cleanly one-shots the Gliscor. Her last two Pokemon are Golem and a Rhyperior. I know I outspeed both of them, so I just leave Strife in. We go for Surf against the Golem and one-shot it because it's quad weak to it, and out comes Rhyperior, who falls to the same exact fate, quad weak to water, so a stab Surf wins us the second Elite Four. Lynch should be relatively easy considering he has fire types, and this is Platinum, so he actually has fire types. I decide to lead with Hojo because Hojo is fast. Doesn't hit the hardest, but it is faster than most all of my other Pokemon besides Highwind. Against Houndoom, we go for Surf, and we one-shot the Houndoom. Out next is Infernape. We outspeed and one-shot the Infernape with Surf. Out comes Magmortar, and surprisingly, it tanks a Surf. Deep in the red, however, the Citrus Berry pulls it into yellow health, and Magmortar just goes for Solar Beam. So a follow-up Surf takes out the Magmortar, and out comes Flareon. We fire off a Surf, and Flareon tanks the Surf on a sliver of health and claps back with a Will-O-Wisp. Flint then uses a full restore, so I do get back-to-back Surfs, although we're taking chip damage from the burn. Last but not least is Rapidash. We do still outspeed it. The burn is just annoying. We're a special attacker, so it doesn't affect us. Again, this is why I didn't go for Floatzel. We one-shot the Rapidash, winning us the third Elite Four battle. Against Lucian, the strategy is very similar to that of Fantina, and we lead with High Wind against his Mr. Mime. We outspeed and take out Mr. Mime with a single Crunch. Against Alakazam, we actually outspeed it, and we take it out with a single Crunch as well. Up next is his Ace Gallade, and I decide to swap into Wallace for that Intimidate drop. We do get hit with a Leaf Blade. I know he's going to go for Stone Edge, so I swap into Strife, who tanks the Stone Edge very well. I then swap back into Wallace on what should have been a Drain Punch, but it's a Leaf Blade, so that is a double Intimidate, and I swap back into Strife on another Stone Edge. We then start firing off Drill Pecks. Drill Peck does well over half damage. Citrus Berry heals him back up to half, and we get hit with a Drain Punch that takes him almost up to full. We fire off a Drill Peck that takes him deep into the red. Gallade then uses another Drain Punch that we tank on 39 HP, and one final Drill Peck takes this thing out. This was a very calculated battle. I should have probably swapped one more time for one more Intimidate. Out next is Bronzong, so I decide we need to swap, and I swap into Wallace. I then go for Aqua Tail. Bronzong just sets up a Calm Mind, so a second Aqua Tail takes out the Bronzong, and out comes Espeon. I debate it for a second to swap, but I decide to stay in and try to tank the Psychic, which takes us down to 28 HP, and I fire off an Aqua Tail that drops Espeon deep into the red. I know that Lucian's going to heal, so I swap into High Wind. Lucian does use a full restore, but a single Crunch is enough to win the Elite Four for our team, Deathless. Cynthia is regarded as one of the hardest champions, due in part that she doesn't have a set type. Against her Spiritomb, I decide to lead with High Wind. I don't have anything super effective into this because there is no fairy typing. I go for Crunch because it's neutral damage and it does about a third. She fires back with a Shadow Ball that does well over half. I know we're not going to survive another one, so I just go for another Crunch, but High Wind is not to be messed with as it gets a critical hit, knocking out the Spiritomb. Out next for Cynthia is her Roserade, and I fire off an Ice Fang that takes it deep into the red, not quite KOing it, and it fires back with an extra sensory that is enough to take out High Wind. I decide to send out 13 and go for a Charge Beam because I know Cynthia is going to use a full restore. We're fishing for that special attack boost, which I do actually get. On the next turn, when I go for Flamethrower, we get outsped and cleanly one-shot with an Energy Ball. I did not expect that. I send out Hojo. We get off an Ice Beam that does a very significant amount of damage, and we do get hit with an extra sensory that takes us down to 100 HP. Ice Beam is enough to take out the Roserade on the next turn. Out comes Garchomp. I expect this thing's going for Earthquake, so I swap into Wallace, and it goes for Dragon Rush, which misses, but the AI read my switch. We do get hit with Dragon Rush on the next turn, and we fire back with an Ice Fang that takes Garchomp deep into the red and freezes. After the Citrus Berry heal, I decide to go for Dragon Dance while this thing stays frozen. I should have gone for a few more Dragon Dances than just the one. I wanted to outspeed and take this Garchomp out, however, as fast as we could. A follow-up Ice Fang does just that, and out comes Togekiss. I fire off an Ice Fang, and this is where I figured out I should have went for a couple more Dragon Dances. because we don't quite take out the Togekiss, and it does take us out with a Shockwave. That is 3 down. I send out Hojo and start using Toxic Spikes. I could take this thing out, but I think we're going to need a little bit of poison for the Melodic in the back. We tank a Shockwave fairly well and set up a second layer of Toxic Spikes, guaranteeing the poison, and a Shockwave does take out Hojo. I send out Genova, jeez. I've been talking for the last 2 hours, pardon me. We get hit with a Shockwave that does a decent amount of damage, but a Brick Break is enough to take out the Togekiss, and I forgot that Cynthia still had 2 Pokemon. She still got her Lucario. I thought she just had Melodic. We get outsped and hit with an Aura Sphere down to 17 HP, but a Brick Break with huge power is enough to cleanly one-shot through Lucario, leaving just Melodic to knock out Genova with an Ice Beam. It is now Melodic versus Strife, Mono, E-Mono, poisoned Melodic that we hit with a Grass Knot. It fires back a resisted Surf. The poison does drop it low enough to where Cynthia uses a full restore, but that's fine because we outspeed and get off back-to-back Grass Knots, winning us the run. We almost wiped to the champion. This run was a lot of fun, and though Gen 4 games used to be one of my least favorite generations, as I play them more and more, I learn that love and that appreciation that a lot of people have. It's how I used to feel about Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. They are some of my favorite games now, but I remember when they originally came out, I wasn't that ecstatic about them. I have found a love for all Pokemon games. I think a little bit more preparation and a little bit better planning, the champion battle could have went just a little bit better. All of these Pokemon did have their shining moments. Genova wasn't seen much, but it did come in clutch for that Lucario, and I'm very happy with the team. We do make it to the end with 6 deaths, not 1. I'm just not changing that counter because it's the end of the run. Strife was the starter, made it all the way to the end, and if you didn't guess or haven't guessed, all of these Pokemon are named after Final Fantasy VII characters. I didn't just name them Cloud and Tifa and Barrett and all of that because that would have been too easy. So I used the last names and had just 10 tons of fun. I've got to quit talking and get this thing edited. I can't believe that we got it voiced over. If I can get this thing edited and out to you guys today, that's going to be awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed the run. I need to get this one done and start planning the next run because I have a couple of different ideas. We are not going to do a Fire Red run, I promise you that. But we may jump back to Gen 3. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know the routine. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.